We are glad to have everyone here and joining us for this presentation tonight. We're also glad we're able to do this presentation, especially because this issue is very important in the midst of everything we're in, and we're just glad that people are still able to have the capacity to help us move this along. And so before we get started with the presentation, I just wanted to go over some housekeeping about how the meeting is going to be run. And so, first of all, my name is Kequanda Baker. I'm the education coordinator for Virginia Interfaith Power and Light, and one of the admin and part of the admin team for the SAVE Coalition, working on the Virginia VNG Header and Justice Project. And so some of the norms for the meeting, we're going to keep everyone muted. And if you have a question, you can put it in the chat box. And when we get to questions at the end of the program, we'll go in order of the questions in the chat box. And when we get to the question portion of the program, please raise your hands after we answer questions, and you have a follow-up question. You can raise your hand to let us know you have a follow-up question to whatever question was in the queue. And if you're on the phone, to raise your hand, you would press *9. And I think that is all of the Zoom housekeeping things we have to go over. And so I'll turn it over to Hannah Lobb, the CCAN, who'll talk about the coalition that we're part of.
Thanks, Juan. Yeah, my name is Hannah Laub. I am the grassroots coordinator in the Richmond area for the Chesapeake Climate Action Network. And just a little introduction on our coalition that has responded to the Header and Justice Project. We've called ourselves SAVE, which stands for Stop the Abuse of Virginian Energy. And we basically formed really quickly. We had our first meeting in February just to respond to Virginia Natural Gas's Header Injustice Project. They don't call it the Header Injustice Project, they call it the Header Improvement Project, but we've decided not to call it that because there is absolutely nothing that is being improved by this project. So we call it the Header Injustice Project, and I didn't put this on the slide, but we have a hashtag on Twitter, #HipCheck. So if you ever want to tweet about us, include that hashtag there. But we responded to the Header and Justice Project, and it's a coalition of organizations, impacted communities, and concerned individuals trying to stop the project however we can every step of the way. You'll learn a lot more about where we're at right now. In this presentation, one of the big things we're rallying around is the public comment period and the public hearing that are coming up. But our goals are basically to take every action that we can at every possible moment to stop this project, engage the community, educate the community, include the media, just get as much about this project out there as possible, because it kind of snuck up on us, so we're sure not everyone in the state knows about it. So thanks for coming, and we're excited to have you here. And yeah, thank you.
Hello, my name is Susan Bonney. Thank you, Hannah. I met Hannah I'm a volunteer for Food and Water Action and the Sierra Club Great Falls group. So I'm in Northern Virginia, and we first became alerted to this project because the northernmost end, it does start in Prince William County, which is not too far from Washington, D.C. The largest city in Prince William County is Manassas. Another part of this project is connecting to a project by the Williams Company, a pipeline, the Transco Interconnector that has been approved and is under construction. But this, the header improvement project is designed to tap into the Williams pipeline. The Sierra Club Great Falls group was working strongly with since the fall of 2019 to stop the construction of the Williams Company's Transco project. And the groups that we found each other and started working together, who are still going to work on this header improvement project prevention, are Mothers Out Front Woodbridge, the Greater Prince William Climate Action Network, Chesapeake Climate Action Network, Food and Water Action Virginia, and Sierra Club. We learned a lot, working on the Transco project, and we really found that people are very focused when a project is right in their geographic area. And that's why in Northern Virginia, the Prince William County and Fauquier County groups most responsive were the Board of Supervisors, some of the legislators. We got a lot of press attention with some community sessions about the Transco pipeline, and we're able to educate people about how they could, and you'll hear this tonight, how the toxins and pollutants that are emitted by pipelines can really be harmful to communities nearby. So what worries us the most about the header improvement project is proposed compressor stations in Prince William County. There are 2 possible sites that haven't even been finalized, but one of them is right next to Nokesville Elementary School. 2 other parts where children and families gather, Lehigh, Portland Park, and Nokesville Park. So we'll hear tonight more about the toxins and emissions and dangers of explosions from pipelines. So having one next to a Nokesville Elementary School, very concerning. We also know this project's going to, in Northern Virginia, will go through 10 acres of wetlands that are within 100 feet of the project. The project, this also constructed will go through the Occoquan Reservoir, which is the water source, public drinking water source for 1 million people in Northern Virginia. And lastly, in Northern Virginia, we'll hear even more about other streams crossings, but there are 4 in Northern Virginia: Cedar Run, and it is the Transco Southeastern Trail expansion is already under construction at these stream crossing in Cedar Run. So we're definitely looking to avoid further disruption of the environmental species that are threatened, federally threatened and endangered, including a freshwater mussel called the yellow lance. So I'm great to have so many people on this call who are working to stop, and we're the northernmost end, so I'll turn it over to the next person as we learn more about the Header Injustice Project.
Thanks, Susan. Next, we have Lynn Wilson, who will speak about the Chickahominy region.
Thanks, guys. Can you hear me? So the Mechanicsville Parallel Pipeline will would run just east of Richmond. You see the map there with that thick red line? That's because there's going to be a new pipeline running alongside an existing pipeline that's been around since the early 90s. But the change is we're going from an existing 16-inch conventional gas pipeline to 30-inch high pressure line. They're going to require we have a 50-foot corridor right now for the existing line, but it's going to have to be widened by 125 feet, cutting a lot of forest through a wetland. It's just an absolute nightmare. And this is, if I didn't say it before, 14.6 miles. And if I could please have the next slide, I will just say that we could not invent a worst case scenario. This is like an asteroid is going to hit. Pipelines are bad enough, but in this particular area, we are talking about the Chickahominy River, which is a primary water source for the city of Newport News, wetlands, stream crossings, 176 acres of forest buffer, endangered species, rare plants and animals, farmland, the State Scenic River. It's part of the John Smith Water Trail. We've got Native American archaeology, Civil War archaeology, 9 historic districts, and national park. Not to mention 25 homes and then 44 more buildings. It's like, what else could you add to the list? We could add bald eagles, but they aren't threatened anymore. So I will just say that. And of course, we are looking at a half-mile blast zone and a 2-mile impact zone. And of course, there are neighborhoods. So this is an absolute nightmare east of Richmond. And I'm going to turn it on to take it on down the river.
Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you.
Next, we have Kim Williams from Norfolk, who will speak about the Gidley compressor station.
Hi, I'm a volunteer with a climate justice group called Mothers Out Front, and our group is
go live pretty
coalition.
Soon. The talks pretty soon.
Our group has formed a coalition with other people concerned about climate justice and environmental justice here in Hampton Roads, and we've named ourselves Chesapeake Pipeline Resistance. This group came together because of a pipeline that did end up going into the ground despite our resistance in the cities of Norfolk and Chesapeake, 9 miles of a fairly large, 30-inch diameter pipeline, large for an urban area to be 3 feet under people's streets and homes and properties. So this, I learned a lot through this effort to try to fight that pipeline that in the cities of Norfolk and Chesapeake was going through predominantly African-American neighborhoods and many low wealth neighborhoods, people who tended to not have as much power as other groups might have in our democracy. And we did see that this pipeline did go through. But we thought this pipeline was going to connect to the proposed Atlantic Coast Pipeline, and it still could happen. But then the end of last year, we heard of this new effort to build yet more new fracked gas infrastructure, and which would involve the city of Chesapeake to build a compressor station right in the vicinity of one of the ends of the South Side connector pipeline. And so this, now it looks like it could have a purpose. It could be used for this header project to pump gas up to, fracked gas up to 2 very questionably needed, unneeded, I would say unneeded, proposed power stations in Charles City County, Virginia. So the compressor stations, what I know about compressor stations, I've learned from friends I've made in this movement in Central Virginia, where people have been fighting another environmentally unjust plan to build a compressor station for that proposed Atlantic Coast Pipeline in Buckingham County, where they wanted to put a compressor station right in the area of 2 churches and that were built by formerly enslaved people and in land still inhabited by the descendants of these people. So I learned from the folks who are fighting the Buckingham compressor station that compressor stations are very dangerous. They're dangerous because they emit very toxic fumes, and it would be bad enough in an urban, a rural area for people to have to breathe those fumes. But here you have a more urban area, and you have low wealth and neighborhoods where people are saddled with higher rates of things like asthma and other issues that already have their breathing affected. And so now they're going to be more, if this Gidley station, compressor station is built, it will have more health impacts on people who are already saddled with more than their fair share. And in this area, there's already horrible environmental situations like a coal ash pit right in the vicinity of homes. So these are, if anybody on this this meeting tonight lives in the neighborhoods of Portlock, Crestwood, Eva Gardens, Sturbridge Village Mobile Homes, McMillan Mobile Homes, you're going to be in the closest vicinity to this Gidley compressor station.
Time to transition.
Okay. So I'm just want to encourage people to realize that when we're talking about fracked gas, when you read about it in the news, you hear about it in the news, it's coming everywhere. Or the people who want to make money off of fracked gas, they're everywhere, and they're here in Hampton Roads, and and we're one piece of this proposed puzzle, the header project.
Hi, Kimberly.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you.
And next, now that we've heard kind of where the different regions this project will hit and impact, we'll move into what it looks. And now we have Ben Cunningham with Allegheny Blue Ridge Alliance.
Yes, hey folks, that's right. I'm Ben Cunningham. I work for the Allegheny Blue Ridge Alliance as our Virginia field coordinator for a program primarily focused on monitoring construction non-compliance, rule breaking and whistleblowing on the Atlantic Coast pipeline, and that's how I got involved with fighting the Atlantic Coast pipeline and the Header Injustice project. Now, let me share a screen with you that I am very proud of. Let me pull that up real quick. So, some of these maps folks here have referenced have been maps that ABRA has made for this coalition, and you can check them out. Specifically, the Hampton Roads Anti-Pipeline Education Map. You can check it out right here at abra-csi.org/solidarity. Now, I'm considering a rename of this since it's expanded to include more regions than the Hampton Roads. But if you click right here, we can get started by checking out the features of this map, where it shows both the Header Improvement Project, or the Header Injustice Project, as some are taking to calling it, and the route of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline through West Virginia, and North Carolina. Over here, you can see a bunch of tools on the left and right. Now, I'm not going to get too in the weeds here, and Lauren, just verbally let me know if you can when I'm nearing my limit, so that I can hit the last bits. But this is a really great hub to go to check. Thanks to check out different features, like where you're concerned about, if it's up here in Nova. Or close to Nova, with the
Washington, I've
two
been there.
portions of the if the two portions of the Header Improvement Project. Let me see, the Quantico Parallel Pipeline and the Transco Interconnect Pipeline, and the potential or potential sites of a compressor station there. You can zoom in and check out those features we were hearing about from others earlier there. Yeah, I thought about, what was the name of that? Let's just see how Nokesville Elementary. That's not gonna work out. Anyways, you can search a number of features on there to find what's close to you that you're most concerned about. We can pan down the map, convergence of pipeline infrastructure, which is what got me most involved here. And I see some chats. I want to make sure. Okay, not for me. We can zoom in on this Gidley compressor station, since it's become quite a focus for a lot of us. As you can see, it's supposed to be located right here where the Atlantic Coast Pipeline would like to be located, this red line, which you can check out or understand best by checking out the legend, and at the terminating end of the Southside Connector Pipeline. A lot of these other polygons and features popping up can tell you more information about the features about themselves when you click on them, like this neighborhood. We can get the name for it there, and we can learn more about these potential pipeline projects by clicking on their features as well. We can learn this pipe operating pressure of 1250 psi. This in a turn on and off here. But one of the most important things that I want you to get out of using this mapping system to best inform yourself is that this is something we can all share. We can literally share it by the share options up here, where you can link this to your website, to your group's Facebook page, send it in an email telling somebody about, hey, did you happen to know that that our neighborhood is actually quite close to this new development? Do we know anything about this? Is there more we want to know? And you can also print out your own sections of this if you want to check them out later. I'm going to let you guys explore this on your own versus showing you every, like I said, every bit from here. But this mapping system is really useful for coordinating your neighborhood, your family, your community group, in making the wisest decisions for your community about opposing this header improvement or header injustice project, or the Atlantic Coast Pipeline in Virginia. Now,
the time left for Tom. Half the time left for Tom.
Great. Okay. Well, then that's all I have to share for that. I'm going to leave it and pass it on over to Tom. Tom, you can go ahead and hit share, and it should, as co-host, stop me from sharing and jump right onto you.
Let's go ahead and start playing a video for everyone. So these are two things. Everyone hear me? Good. One, kind of, we're located in Charles City County right now. What you're going to be seeing are just citizen drone shots of the area. Two proposed fracked-gas power stations, the Chickahominy gas station, and then also the C4GT, are being slotted for the town of Roxbury in Charles City County. So as we're kind of flying over, I'll just kind of be reading off some information here. The proposed Chickahominy power station would be 1,650 megawatts, and the proposed C4GT power station would be 1,060 megawatts. Both of these frac gas stations would be within 1 mile of each other in the community of Roxbury in Charles City County. Citizen drone documentation of the proposed site show a farm and livestock within 0.2 miles of the station's point of emissions. Another farm is 0.4 miles away from the proposed point of emissions.
So sorry, one request to speak up just a tiny bit or speak more directly into the microphone.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. Within a mile radius of the Chickahominy power station site would be the C4GT frac gas power station. This would make it the 5th largest gas emissions area in the United States. This community is also faced with Dominion Energy Substation, the Colonial Pipeline, a Virginia natural gas station, and multiple transmission lines. And you'll also see a massive landfill also in this area. Annual air emissions for the Chickahominy gas station would include 407 tons of nitrogen oxide, 323 tons of carbon monoxide, and 211 tons of volatile organic compounds. I'm going to scroll through a little bit more. I'll show you some kind of closer shots of farms and livestock around the point of emissions of Chickahominy. Kind of further away, more residents, and also in view both with the C4GT power station and Chickahominy power station. I also wanted to share, is everyone able to, let's see. Some stills as well from the Chickahominy River itself. So this is what Lynn Wilson was discussing about the Mechanicsville parallel pipeline. And I just wanted to focus on a couple areas and let you see the proximity that the parallel pipeline is being planned next to the Chickahominy River and wetlands. Yeah, and that's what I have to share. We can move on to the next person.
Good evening.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Before we move on to the next section, I just want to remind everyone, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat and we will get to them right at the end when we take questions. And if you're on the phone, you can use the raise hand feature, which is *9, to note that you have a question, and we will ask you during the question portion as well. Thank you. And next we have Dr. Mary Finley Brooke, who will give us an overview of the Header and Justice Project.
Good evening. It's an honor to be here. So I want to start with precursors to the Header and Justice Project, and I'm going to discuss corporate influences and regulatory failures getting us to where we are today. Next slide. Many of you recall the controversies over the expansion of the Skiffes Creek high voltage lines crossing the James River. There was much early opposition to this project. Interestingly, after impact statements were rushed through, and I will talk about court decisions tied to this regulatory failure, and after millions of dollars of mitigation funds were released, much of this opposition died. For example, tribes, including the Chickahominy, had gone on the record with various concerns, but have since fallen in line with subsequent expansion following multi-million-dollar payments. It should be mentioned that these negotiations with Native populations happened during federal recognition processes, which did not allow for free, prior, or informed consent. Next slide. This history is particularly important for the Header project because Skiffes Creek line made it possible for the expansion of the Dominion Energy Substation in Charles City that allowed the siting of the gas plants that we're talking about today. It started this whole process leading to the Header project. Next slide. For those of you who know this history, the Skiffes Creek project ended up in the courts. It was found that the Army Corps of Engineers had not completed the necessary environmental and social impact assessments, but the lines are already built and energized. The cooptation of land trusts and other groups, as I mentioned, with the mitigation funds cannot be reversed, so impact assessments now are likely to be less accurate. Many of us know that there was a similar story with the $58 million in mitigation funds from Dominion Energy's Atlantic Coast Pipeline. As multi-million-dollar payments often do, this money appeared to bias and or silence many in the state government and individuals or groups in the conservation community with direct and indirect benefit. I, for one, am getting tired of this pattern. It's all part of what we often disparagingly call the Virginia way. Corporations controlling our so-called democratic institutions. Next slide. So much co-optation, pro-corporation bias, and regulatory failure has gotten us to where we are today, with our state crisscrossed by fracked gas build-out and potentially much more on the way, even though these corporations are having a very difficult time, as we will hear, an increasingly hard time demonstrating need. Before I go any further, I'd like to thank the organization Pipeline Impacts, and particularly Stephen Metz at the New School for GIS Analysis and the maps I utilize in these slides. Now, the reason why Transco, and we've heard this referred to already, Williams Transcontinental, which in Virginia is made up of a group of parallel pipelines, of course extends beyond us from Texas to New York. So Transco is not on this slide because the public frequently does not have access to locational data. It takes painstaking work to geolocate and map data that should be readily available because, as you just heard, these infrastructure projects impact many lives deeply and frankly in very scary ways. Next slide. Many of us know, for example, of the Appomattox explosion on the Transco. This was felt all the way in Union Hill in Buckingham County and was one of the motivations behind the 5-year battle to stop the compressor station. The main reason, of course, as we've already heard, was environmental racism and disproportionate harm to an historic African-American community. This is a pattern, of course, repeated in this Header and Justice project. Next slide. But industry is often able to hide or mask, making it very difficult to obtain basic information, including where their gas is coming from or going to, at what prices, and in what amounts. Next slide. In case you think I'm exaggerating, please look at Virginia Natural Gas filings on their dockets with the State Corporation Commission. You're going to find out later how to do this. I'm only providing 2 examples here of many dozen. Next slide. Before I discuss specific project sites, and I'm going to focus on the 2 with the most blatant environmental racism, I want to make clear one thing we have not been talking about enough in the SAVE Coalition. Virginia Natural Gas is the subsidiary of one of the largest and most aggressive utility companies in the US called Southern Company. Southern Company is also Georgia Power and many other firms. By using state and locality specific names, giant corporations are able to mask their status as exploitative outsiders and make it seem like these projects are coming from the vicinity or were proposed to benefit the locality or the state. Don't be fooled. Virginia Natural Gas aims to help outside corporations connect to a series of interstate pipelines, and many of us suspect this could set the stage for exports. Next slide. The way that gas build-out occurs, the public is kept in the dark through a regulatory process called segmentation. We've heard a couple of people already talking about this. Some of it's shown here with past projects connecting to what is now the header project. Each little part goes through the permitting and approval process if that was all we needed to look at. By redacting information and keeping internal communications from watchdog organizations, unless we have a successful lawsuit to force transparency with the public, we seldom know true plans for expansion until it's too late to stop. Many of us are getting sick and tired of this dangerous and potentially fatal ploy. Next slide. Unfortunately, since these energy and utility companies have so much power and money compared to our local governments, this manipulation of the public is often done with the eager support of local governments who act almost blindly when seeking tax revenue. Next slide. Even though I've followed these processes in many places, my detailed documentation of the governance of these gas plants, including the role of Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ, whose regulatory fiascos in Charles City over the past 14 months and continuing still absolutely astonish me. But when you have actors like Dominion Energy and Southern Company shelling out large quantities in consultancy fees, media campaigns, and remediation funds, the Virginia way allows for the subjugation of the rights of communities of color and potentially creates deadly risks for low-income families. Next slide. As we've heard, pollution levels near C4GT and a proposed second gas plant called Chickahominy Power are around where there are already concerning levels of pollution from a toxic landfill, which does have recent notice of violation, and the Roxbury Industrial Corridor. Next slide. You see here the location of these facilities along with the 2 proposed gas plants. So C4GT is entirely permitted, and Chickahominy Power has a water permit pending probably this summer that's going to go in front of the Water Pollution Control Board because this has been a very controversial process. Next slide. Charles City is a majority minority county with a large African American and Native population, up to 60 to 70% people of color in some areas of the 3-mile radius closest to the plants. As
2 minutes.
In the process of these, in the proximity of these plants, we're concerned about harm to local health. We've heard a lot about this. So I'm going to go to my next slide, where I'm going to end at the Gidley compressor station in Chesapeake. This is also, of course, as we've heard, near the terminus of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. Next slide. And I'm honestly shocked that Virginia Natural Gas is proposing an expansion here because of the high levels of legacy pollutants, as well as the number of other toxic facilities in the vicinity. This is environmental racism. In the 3-mile radius around Gidley, residents are 55% people of color, 31% low income. Any new pollution will have potentially devastating consequences for this vulnerable population. Next slide. With preliminary analysis of the census tracts in a 1-mile radius around Gidley compressor using EPA's EJ screen, thanks again to Stephen Metz, and pipeline impacts, you can see traffic exposure, Superfund sites, and risk management plan facilities, as well as hazardous waste percentiles, are very high in comparison to other parts of Virginia. Please return for the second SAVE Coalition town hall later tonight, specifically focused on Hampton Roads. Next slide. Keeping in mind what I said earlier about needing to be aware of cloaked or hidden corporate pipeline expansion plans, I will end here reminding people of other proposed gas plants and the shocking truth that pipelines to supply those may not already exist. As these plants develop, we may be facing even more fracked gas build out in a time of climate crisis and with corporations directly targeting heavily burdened and vulnerable populations. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. And now we'll have Tom Hadwin, who will tell us about the need for this project.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right? As you can see, I've put the dollars here because as many new pipelines are these days, they're more about the profit opportunity than they are about meeting a specific public need. Next one. But to be clear, Virginia Natural Gas has a legal obligation to meet requests for service. And that's what C4GT did. They're fully permitted by DEQ, and they made a request for service, and that began the pipeline design process. But I think what we need to focus on is, are these requests legitimate? First of all, these are privately owned power plants. They don't have any direct benefit to Virginians. And because of the economic setbacks and other factors, getting access to money, they've even asked to delay the project. Although Virginia Natural Gas came back with a motion to actually speed it back up. Next. Their marketplace for their energy is a not-for-profit organization called PJM. They're in charge of all the electrical generation and interstate transmission in the shaded area that you see that are in parts of 13 states. Next. PJM has been granted the right by the State Corporation Commission to use its forecast for Dominion, for example, rather than Dominion's over-exaggerated demand increases. So you can see that that forecast for the next decade, actually more than that, is flat. Next. So what has happened in the past when we've had economic downturns, this is the one in 2008, 2009, you see that electricity use fell even faster than the decline in economic activity. And as the economy picked back up, our energy use did not to the same degree. In fact, in the last 10 years since this time, even though our economy has picked up, our populations continued to grow, our electrical use in this region has remained flat. Next. So the blue bars show the excess of generating capacity in PJM. The zero you see is meeting the peak demand at the time. And the red bar corresponds to what they need to hold in reserve in case the unit goes down unexpectedly or the weather is more extreme. So all they need to have reliable operation is the blue bar going to the red line. Anything to the right of that is excess capacity, unneeded generation that somebody's having to pay for. And in 2023, this is when C4GT would begin operation, and just a few years later, you can see how much that surplus has grown. Next, please. So in addition to selling into an already saturated market, the COVID-19 caused economic setback is really causing a strain on the availability of capital. Lots of businesses, lots of unemployed people are going to be looking for cash. That's going to make it harder for these private generators to fund their project. Next. In addition to that, Virginia passed a law this year that is requiring power plants to pay for the amount of carbon they emit in the form of carbon dioxide. And over the next 10 years, the statewide cap will decline by 3% each year. Next. And that cap will have to be shared by presently 33 power plants. So each one will have to be purchasing an allowance for each ton of carbon it emits. Next one, please. And this will be done in an auction. So the blue bar you see on the left is the statewide cap in 2030 that should be shared by 23 power plants around the state. If C4GT gets built, that's just one more plant, but it will take up over 1/5 of the cap. Next one, please. If the even larger Chickahominy plant is built, those two together will occupy more than half of the statewide limit for all of our carbon emitting power plants. That means these allowances will get more and more expensive. The ratepayers of the utilities who own the other plant will pass those costs along to its customers. So by these two plants operating for a private profit will cost the rest of us a great deal more money. Next one. So it's coming right out of our pocket, out of the utility bills of our businesses and our families. Next. Now, C4GT and Chickahominy are organized as limited liability companies. That means the investors are limited in their liability only to the extent of their investment. And their investment's going to build the power plant and to operate it, not to guarantee their full lifetime payments back to the pipeline. So if they shut down early, as they have in other states, 3 years in Texas, 8 years in California, and actually the new Clean Energy Act in Virginia requires them to be closed by 2050, so they would operate at maximum 27 years. And Virginia Natural Gas is expecting this pipeline to be written off over 70 years. So any shortfall has to be picked up by someone else. Next. So who pays them? Well, it could be the other shippers like Dominion and Columbia Gas, but then those higher costs would be passed on to their customers. It could be VNG. Perhaps they would pass that on to their ratepayers if they could, but the SEC is now sensitive to that and trying to put some barriers to that. But now we've crippled an important gas company because they can't get money back to pay for what they've invested in the pipeline. And these people asking for service, it doesn't really cost them anything. There's no risk. Next. So not only isn't the need of these private generators legitimate, but both Dominion and Columbia Gas are all also asking for more service without really needing it. In fact, they're saying we need it for diversity of service. They don't even claim that they need it to have adequate service. Dominion is already served by 3 or 4 different pipelines. They really don't need another one, especially since they announced 2 weeks ago that they're not building any more gas plants. And in last year's fuel factor proceeding, the SEC made a ruling that says they have adequate capacity in existing pipelines to meet the needs of all their current power plants. So my recommendation in comments was for the SEC to rule on whether these are good requests or not before ruling on the need to build a new pipeline. Next one, please. And that, along with a general request to postpone the hearings, one, for a reason many of you already commented on, it's really difficult for the public to participate right now. The second one is these issues about, is C4GT really going to get built? Is Dominion's request legitimate? Is Columbia Gas's need legitimate? Remember, Dominion has a $6 million contract, $6 billion that they owe the ACP over 20 years for a huge amount of gas, for a huge amount of pipeline capacity that they won't need because they won't have any new power plants. Virginia Natural Gas has a similar commitment for $3 billion. These companies have already put themselves or potentially their ratepayers on the hook for gas service, and now they're asking for more. Now, my recommendation to the SCC, and others may want to make it too, is take your time. Wait until the need is certain before issuing an order to construct something that may not get fully paid for, and then whose lap do those costs end up? Perhaps the ratepayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. And now we will have Beth Credatis, who will let us know more about the SCC comment process and how we can make a comment to the state corporate commission, who will have the hearing for this process and the comment period, which the deadline is this Tuesday. So Beth will tell us more about how to make a comment and more talking points.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think after hearing everything we have just seen, we're going to all want to act on this. And one of the most important acts we can take right now is to contact the SCC by submitting a public comment. As Quan just said, we only have until Tuesday to do so. And there are a couple of different ways that you could find the comment box. Of course, you can see it right here on the screen right now. I also just put it in the chat, and it's going to go out in the toolkit that we'll be sending out after tonight's webinar. You could also find it by Googling the SCC public comment and just pulling it out of the list of options. It's the number is PUR 2019-00207. So you have all of these options for a way to get to the actual link to comment. Make sure you do take the time between now and Tuesday to submit that comment. After Tuesday, the next step, according to the SCC as of now, is that there will be a public hearing, which is scheduled for May 12th. And many people have already referenced this as something that we would ask to be delayed. We're frankly shocked that they're still planning to have a public hearing. If you go to the SCC's site on this particular case, they make it seem like the event would actually still take place at the SCC building on the second floor in a courtroom. But obviously for health concerns, people can't safely gather in numbers more than 10 people. I mean, it wouldn't be safe for us all to go. There's also been some talk of them holding this by Skype or doing some kind of online communication, but lots of the residents of the areas that would be directly impacted by this don't have access to the technology they'd need, or certainly wouldn't necessarily be able to get on to a Skype to weigh into that public hearing. So we're really trying to pressure the SCC to postpone the public hearing so that they can do it in a way that would be more participatory for all of the impacted parties. I do want to just say, if you do submit a comment, it will be part of the public record. So when you click on the link, you will go to a page that asks you for your name, obviously your address, your email, this information, and of course your comment. All of this information will be published on the SCC site. So it's important to just be aware that while the gas companies might be allowed to have some of their private information redacted, your information will be shared publicly on the SCC site, but please don't let that deter you. My personal concern is that the SCC is assuming that a lot of Virginians are not that concerned about this public hearing, that they weren't planning to attend anyway. This is a small matter that we don't really need to weigh in on, and that they can decide this privately without having that public hearing in a way that includes the general public. But I would suggest, just by the numbers of the people on the call tonight, that a lot of Virginians are deeply concerned about this. And we need to make that clear to the SCC between now and Tuesday, so that they have that information, and will consider postponing the public hearing. And there are also lots of other things you might choose to comment on. And I think in just a moment, you're going to hear about some of those talking points you might include in your comment when we hear about the toolkit. Thanks.
Yep, thanks, Beth. Yeah, we'll just have a short overview of the toolkit and then maybe a few questions for the last minutes of the program.
Hey everybody, this is Jess Sims. I am presenting on behalf of Stacy Lovelace, who could not be here this evening, but has put together a really fantastic toolkit that's got lots of great resources. I just want to confirm y'all can see that, right? Okay, great. So there's something that can be found at bit.ly/no uppercase hip and then lowercase toolkit. That's a resource that will be sent and shared with y'all, but it's got a step-by-step instruction of how to take action and next steps on this project and to remain engaged. So you can see here on the cover page of this, there are 5 separate sections and contact information for Virginia pipeline resistors. You can click on the bookmarked link that's found at the end of each of the sections. So if you were to click on submitting a comment to the SCC, there's lots of great talking points here that address the lack of need, the threat to ratepayers, danger to water, and that the public participation process has been impacted, which is something that's been talked about before. The second section on the toolkit, one moment, sorry about that. The second section on the toolkit is for contacting elected officials. And I'm going to open that in a new tab. Just want to make sure y'all can see that. Oh, here we go. It's got information for all different levels of your local and state government. It's got a phone script, a sample letter, contact information for Governor Northam. It gives you lots of great information that you can use. Now go ahead and scroll down to the third section, writing a letter to the editor. Writing letters to the editor is a fantastic way to get accurate, up-to-date, correct information to the public about processes, regulatory decisions, or projects that they may not be aware of, may not have had much coverage in local media. This has a step-by-step instruction on how to write a successful letter to the editor and guidelines for different publications around the state. The fourth tab takes you to resources, which include fact sheets for each region of the state, groups that you can follow online for more info, and then ways to stay updated. It also includes a link to the map that we saw earlier from Ben. So this is a toolkit that's going to be available to everyone who has RSVP'd for this event, and it's a great way to continue sharing resources and staying involved. And if you'll bear with me just a moment, I'm going to switch back over to our slideshow.
Thanks, Jess. And now I'll turn it over to Lauren, who will give us a few rounds of questions and answers.
Hey guys, we've got one question on deck, so I'm going to start with that. I will look back at the chat and the raised hands in just a moment, so be sure to start thinking of your questions and putting in the chat box and raising your hand, and I'll get to you after this first question. This one came in during Ben and Tom's mapping segment, I believe. The question is, I know that Chickahominy is also a tribe. Do we know if any of the proposed pipeline goes through indigenous land or water source? So if Ben, Tom, or anybody else wants to take that.
I could go ahead and take that one. And before I say anything, I'd like to say that I've worked on issues of Indigenous rights for 25 years, and I don't want to say anything culturally insensitive, and I want to be really clear that I have reached out to the tribe, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But I want to say it's so much more than their land. They live in this direct vicinity within 3 miles. Something like 80% of their remaining tribal members, there's less than 1,000 people affiliated with the tribe, something like 80% live right in this area. And because I have worked on these issues for so long, focused internationally, I reached out and sent information to Chief Adkins before I started working literally with any groups in this area. And the thing that I found most astonishing when he went in front of the Air Board, he talked about being contacted by this alarmist, and he was actually referring to me. And what he said in front of the Air Board was that it was as if they were talking like we were having fracking. And I found that totally astonishing because I would never want to have a frack pad in my backyard. I know how incredibly toxic living by a frack pad is, but really for me, one of the only things that would have been worse is to have these two massive gas plants right on top of the tribe. So not only is it their land, absolutely 100%, their land is absolutely impacted, but it is their population and their health. And it's very, very, very close. And I don't know if anybody else wants to follow up on that, but this is a very upsetting and alarming situation. It's very concerning. And that is when we look at the number of people of color, it's something like 19% are Native. I say Native, not Native American, because Natives in Virginia have asked me to do that. They don't want people to say Native American. They would prefer, from people I have heard, that they prefer we just say Native. And so, yeah, this is very serious. And I don't know if anybody else would like to pick up there.
Didn't they take a payout? I heard they took a big payout from Headwind earlier, mentioned that. Didn't they take a big payout?
There was a multi-million-dollar settlement, and with that, they've been able to help the state obtain a conservation area that was put in their name that's being called tribal land. They have no control over it. It's not even co-management. It is basically a portion of conservation land that has been put in their name. And yes, there were multiple millions of dollars transferred in that.
Thanks so much, Mary. Did anybody else need to chime in? Going once, going twice, sold. Okay, the next question that we had, which I can probably answer, but I'm just going to throw it out to the group anyway. Is the header improvement project the sum total of all the infrastructure projects we've seen in this presentation, or is it some subset thereof? I think what the question is getting at is there more of the header improvement project that we haven't even had a chance to touch on, or is this it? Once you have heard everything we talked about, that is the totality of the header improvement project. Greg, please let me know if I interpreted that wrongly.
Yeah, I guess, thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Greg.
You know, I thought that the header improvement project was a section of pipeline until I listened to this briefing. So it's the header improvement project does it include the pipeline, all the segments of the pipeline, the station and the power plants, all of that together is called one thing, the header improvement project?
Yes. And again, if it's confusing yet to people, Virginia Natural Gas does label it as the header improvement project. We're calling them on that and renaming it the header and justice project. But yes, we actually have a great, some great fact sheets that Jess Sims put together for us, and those will be in the email also, that kind of really nicely encapsulates the totality of the project, which does include, you're correct, pipeline, actual pipeline infrastructure, pipeline pipe, compressor stations, C4GT. So yes, it's all a giant web of infrastructure that comprises one project. Does that answer your question, / do any of the other admins need to comment on anything?
Add to that, I heard mention of power plants. The header improvement project does not include the power plants themselves. It only the connection to the power plant in order to provide it with the gas supply.
Okay, and that's gas coming from outside of the state of Virginia into the state of Virginia to be burned by power plants in Virginia. Is that right?
That's correct.
For a state that just passed a law that says by 2045, we cannot burn any fossil fuels.
These private plants Dominion and APCO are on the 2045 schedule. It's 2050 for the remainder, the co-ops, merchant generators and so forth. But it's still, yes, they would be limited in their lifetime. Typically, power plants last or get paid off over 35 or 40 years. These would be limited in their life to a shorter period, depending on when they
Not only that, but there's also the renewable portfolio standard that has to be met every single year, right?
That is just for specific utilities like Dominion. These people would not be a part of that. These are privately owned and operated power plants.
Oh, so the VCA was only for was basically only for Dominion, which is
phase 1 and phase 2 utilities, which are the two big investor-owned ones, Dominion and APCO.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, guys, we have officially passed our 6:30 time slot. So thank you so much. We do have one outstanding question about permits and reviews that I'm noting, and we will get back to that person separately and also address it in our follow-up email tomorrow. Thank you so much for everyone being here on behalf of all the admins and the hosts and the SAVE Coalition. We so appreciate it. Not to worry, we're not going to kick you out right this second. Like we mentioned earlier, CPR 757, Chesapeake Pipeline Resistors, is hosting a additional hour of this focused in on the Hampton Roads region that's beginning at 7. So I and some other people will likely be staying in this, not likely, I and some other people will be staying in this meeting and leaving it open so that people can jump in and join that at 7. So if you want to hang out and talk a little bit more, you're welcome to, and the chat box will stay open. Watch out for that post-program email, and be sure to follow all of us on our Facebook pages for our different organizations, Sierra Club, CCAN. I'm not even going to try because I'll leave people out. So feel free to hit us up that way, and we so appreciate you taking your dinner hour to learn about this. It's a big issue that affects all Virginians, and stop it. So thank you again. Watch out for more of these teletown halls that will be coming, including the next one on a deep dive on health impacts, which will be really, really talking to your neighbors. So thank you again, and we'll see you soon, and we'll be right here if you're going to join us at 7. Hampton Roads specific hour of the Header Injustice Project Teletown Hall program. I'm just stalling to let the participant count pop up a tiny bit more, but we're going to get rolling here in just a minute. I see we've got a few people on that are not CPR 757 members. And to be prompt, we're going to get rolling. So thank you so much for joining us. If you joined us for the 5:30 to 6:30 statewide coalition hour that just preceded this, gold star for staying in it for the long haul. This hour is specifically presented by CPR 757, so we're just going to go through a little bit of background information about who we are and what that is, and then just touch on a few Zoom housekeeping rules to make sure that this meeting goes really smoothly, this program goes really smoothly, and then we'll dive right in. So we are coming to you as CPR 757. CPR stands for Chesapeake Pipeline Resistors. 757 is, of course, the main Hampton Roads, maybe the only Hampton Roads actually, area code for phone numbers. So that is the organization that we are all a part of. This coalition was started actually before my time with CCAN a few years ago to fight the South Side Connector and Hampton Roads. Several members of CPR 757 that are on right now were, original members of that. The coalition went a bit dormant once that project was completed, and has since been reinvigorated as we are fighting our next big fight against Virginia Natural Gas's Header Injustice Project. So we have been working both on our own within the Hampton Roads region and with partners, and then also as a part of the larger Virginia State Coalition, SAVE Coalition, against all parts of the Header and Justice Project across the state. But this hour is just about Hampton Roads specifically, because that is our territory and what we are focused most intensely on. So yeah, that's who we are. You can find a lot of our information both in the Chesapeake Pipeline Resistors Facebook group, and you can also contact us if you have any questions. Speaking of questions, as we are going through this hour-long program, if you have any questions at any point in time, please feel free to put them in the chat. I will be watching that and making note of them so that we can move through as many of them as possible at the end, or so that we can adjust them specifically with you later, or if we feel like an answer would benefit everyone, we'll put it in the program, the post-program email that all participants will get sometime tomorrow or early into the weekend. You're also welcome to raise your hand at any point in time, and again, we'll take note of that and get to you. Thanks for demonstrating, Steve. And get to you once it is time for questions. Please mute yourself if you are not talking so that we don't get any background noise distracting from our presenters. And with that, I think we're going to go ahead and go right into some mapping information with Ben.
All right. Hey, folks. Thank you, Lauren. Let me just get my screen sharing going. Okay, everybody can see my screen well? Sorry, I can't see you. Let me see. Yes, I'm seeing some thumbs ups. Great. Well, yeah, as has been said before, thanks everybody for joining on this important call. Let me get these little talking heads out of my way so I can see you. And I'm Ben Cunningham, the Virginia Field Coordinator with the Allegheny Blue Ridge Alliance Pipeline CSI, or Compliance Surveillance Initiative program. And we are organized to fight the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, which you may or may not know has been stalled for over a year, going on 2 years now, but is not dead yet. And while that's been installed, Virginia Natural Gas has cooked up the, come to call it, or header improvement project, as you'll see it written in dockets and so on. At any time if I'm going over my time or I am going too quickly. Let's dive right in. At abra-si.org/solidarity, we're going to drop this in the chat box as well so you can see it there and check it out. You can find our solidarity maps, ones that we've made in solidarity with other communities, because I live in Charlottesville and I'm from Nelson County, Virginia, and that's how I got involved fighting the Atlantic Coast Pipeline out here. So I'm coming to you not from the 757, but this mapping system is called the Hampton Roads Anti-Pipeline Education Map, and that's what I hoped it to be. You'll notice that it includes all features of the proposed header improvement or header injustice project, and it's going to take a more, and the tri-state project, the Atlantic Coast. As it loads, I'll be able to zoom in here to the Norfolk Chesapeake area. Okay, great. First thing you see is a little explainer splash screen. This welcome screen here tells you what this page is, a bit more background. There's a user guide you can be prompted to download right there. Tells you a little bit more information right down here, but I'm going to skip over that and let you do the reading and tell you that this is full of information for you to check out. Up here are all y'all's tools. I'm gonna let you read the user guide to figure out what these buttons do and how to best use them. But one thing I do want to point out that isn't in the user guide is that you can check out a fact sheet that this coalition has put together right here, a link to it, and fact sheet by the Southern Environmental Law Center on the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, and then links to a lot of the groups that have contributed great organizing and work here. Now, I was asked to zoom in and show folks more specifically Hampton Roads, because this is a 757 specific call. Y'all in the 757 will be pleased, I think, well, I don't know how pleased, but you might appreciate that I've added the most detail to the 757 here. In y'all's area, you're able to zoom in to pipelines owned by Virginia Natural Gas, like the Southside Connector Pipeline, which y'all are much more familiar with than me, and where it connects to a property that that these companies hope one day holds both the terminus of the Atlantic Coast Pipe Project, the Gidley Compressor Station. Now, compressor stations, I'll get into health risks as a segue to our next section in a minute. But one thing I did want to point out, some of the features you can see on here, say by turning on your legend or by clicking them to find out more. One feature that was mentioned in our pre-call session by Jeff was that, you know, there's an elementary school right in what we call the incineration zone or the blast zone or the high consequence area, as it's called by engineers. There's an elementary school right here. It's Thurgood Marshall Elementary. You can click on those little dots as they're explained over here into what they display, and you can click on these other polygons to see, you know, oh, this is this neighborhood right here. I wonder if they know. The folks in this church right here, you know, are they aware, you know, of this project? I'm sure with the Southside Connector Pipeline being already built, folks there have been activated already, but that's just an example for y'all to use. Now, I have been asked to keep, okay, yeah, that's just for the questions. I've been asked to keep it short and sweet. So one thing I'm gonna segue here for us with is talking about the Gidley compressor station. Now, for those that don't know, a compressor station is a necessary component to any pipeline or natural gas pipeline system. You have to have pressure to push the gas one direction or another. That's what this this plant would do 24/7, 365, running turbines, burning that gas to you know, move the gas around. This creates some emissions, things, you know, everything from and so on, as well as a number of other toxic chemicals that you don't really want to be breathing. One thing that, you know, before I hand this off to Steve Paget to talk about health concerns regarding the compressor station and other issues close to these pipelines, that I did want to point out is another layer of this analysis that you can turn on is race and Hispanic origin boundary tracks. Now, bear with me, you know, as I explain with these yellow and pink lines and such. You can click on any one of these areas, and it'll tell you the predominant race in the area. And it is so displayed based on that predominance. Like over here is the pink, which is to represent, or I guess an amalgamation. Anyways, but one thing you're able to do with this mapping system is see what types of, you know, what do the communities that are affected look like? Where are they? Do they know that they're you know, getting this thing in their backyard if they don't speak up and if these companies get their way? I'm not sure, but I hope that the organizers that are hearing this, the community activists, and just anybody that hears this can use this mapping system to educate themselves and their communities to make the best decision for your own community. Again, you can find this map, among others, and the rest about the Pipeline CSI program from Allegheny Blue Ridge Alliance here at abra-csi.org/solidarity. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Steve Paget, who's going to talk about health concerns associated with this header improvement, header injustice project, and other natural gas infrastructure in urban and non-urban environments.
Thanks, Ben. Quick admin time before you jump in, Steve. So the link to that map will be in the post-program email that everyone will get. So not to worry if you didn't get that exactly right now, but we will send that to you. And a quick admin moment for me to steal the screen from Ben and pop up a slide before Steve starts talking. Can everyone see potential health effects of compressor stations? Any nods for me? Yes? Okay, great. Take it away,
Yeah,
Steve.
You're muted, Steve.
Right. Okay, I'm just now reading the slide. I guess okay. particulate matter. Okay, well, I guess, well, first thing I learned from the last session that this compressor station is going into like what is effectively an industrial park with all kinds of toxic things going on, like coal ash. So, I mean, obviously, that doesn't help. In fact, there may be a synergetic effect with the other health risks, but that's just generally a pretty bad area. Now, as far as the toxicity of compressor stations, it's really not as bad, not nearly as bad as a fracking site. Because fracking, there's just so much stuff that goes on around fracking. There's methane flares, and there's been a lot of study in Pennsylvania, at the University of Pennsylvania, of the health effects of the fracking plants, which is probably mostly related to methane. I guess, there's problems with pregnancy, women that are pregnant, and it's just a lot, and the water can, in some cases, get severely damaged. So that's actually kind of a different story. Compressor stations, on the other hand, aren't nearly so bad, but they are bad. Nobody wants to live near a compressor station for two reasons. First thing is there's the nitrous oxide and the carbon monoxide. I don't know exactly the range of that, but like carbon monoxide, it will leave the body. So it's like in a car. I mean, we're always ingesting carbon monoxide. So I don't know the density exactly, but the bigger issue is the VOCs, volatile organic compounds, which includes all these man-made stuff like benzene, ethyl glycol, formaldehyde, methyl tetrotoluene, xylene, butadiene, all these things, these hydrocarbons are carcinogens. And probably from what I've read, for a typical compressor station, you don't want to be within 1,000 feet. The air is going to be pretty much toxic all the time within 1,000 feet. So I don't know how many people are going to be impacted by that air. But I wasn't able to figure that out. But I don't think it's going to be too many. I don't know for sure, but that's the problem. Now as you get further away, those risks diminish substantially. Now the other risk is the sound, the sound coming from the compressor station, especially the low frequency stuff, because you don't really hear it as so much, but it does travel a long ways. And there are actually journals, scientific journals that study the effects of sound, of low frequency sound.
We have that video, and I'm showing it right now if you want me to pop it on for a quick second. So
what is that?
We have that video in the slide deck if you want me to play it real quick so people can hear
what
that
is it?
sound.
That's the compressor station?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Hey, go ahead. Let's see what it shows. Oh, it's not really doing anything. Or nothing visible. Now, yeah, of course, these gases, these VOCs, they're not. Oh, here it goes. Yeah, there's VOCs, and
we're not really hearing the compressor station. Maybe if we take off Steve's mic for a second?
Yeah, maybe we can hear the sound.
Actually, you'll need to press a toggle switch in the share screen button
That's
there.
okay. We'll do it at the end. I don't want to
Yeah.
get bogged down in tech things. Keep
Mhm.
going, Steve. I just wanted to show that video in case it was relevant to what you're talking about.
Yeah, I have never really heard this. But like I say, it's really not how loud it is. It's low frequency sound. It won't be loud, but it does have an effect on people. It actually, if you're too close, it can rupture eardrums. But from a farther distance, I mean, beyond 1,000 feet, there are effects going out because the low frequency sound travels. And you may barely hear it, but it can disturb your sleep, can create anxiety. It's not a huge health risk, but it's just, part of the unnatural presence of an industrial object like a compressor station. And so you do have that, and that's, you just don't want to be close. Nobody should be close. And like I say, I mean, the 1,000 feet is considered typically for a typical average size compressor station, because they come in all different sizes. And oh yeah, there's thousands of them, by the way, all over the country. Now, as far as you want to be further away, as far away as you can get. And now, as far as explosions go, they tend not to explode. It's the pipelines that explode. It's very rare for a compressor station to explode, whereas pipelines are exploding all the time. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of events in the United States in the past few years of exploding pipelines. And you got those high pressure pipelines coming in there. So you do have the risk in that park around the compressor station, which I haven't been there. We were planning to go there, but with the virus, we didn't. In that park, I mean, there's all kinds of toxic stuff going on. And we really need to figure out exactly the number of homes and which homes are at risk and how bad. And that's something that I'd like to that I will follow up on next week with Ben. So.
That sounds perfect. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, that's about it. Oh yeah, ozone, of course. Of course, there's ozone. Forgot to mention ozone.
I know Jeff is dovetailing in with some specifics. So I think I'm gonna keep us on the timeline track and turn it over to him. And Jeff, I think I'm gonna back right up to your first slide and let you take it away.
Okay, hi, Jeff Staples here, and on to that, this is, most compressor stations you do not see in an urban area. This area is very densely inhabited. We have Eva Gardens there, and then right across the street we have Sturbridge Mobile Home Park, and then Midway Mobile Home Park. Several other high density area neighborhoods are all around this project. And even after 1,000 feet, if the wind's right, it's going to be blowing more concentrated into some of those neighborhoods. I just wanted to point that out, and please stick around to listen to that video at the end. It's amazing how loud this thing can really be. I remember living near Oceana some years ago, pretty close to that, 24/7 actually. So one of the things that nobody really knew about the Southside Connector. Why were they building that project? A big 24-inch interstate grade transmission fracked gas pipeline. Why were they building that? Well, they built it and then no gas has ever gone through it yet. So this turns out to be the reason why. This pipeline, the Southside Connector, will connect to other pipelines that would take it to the Charles City power plant one of the two that is proposed up there. The one that is proposed, this pipeline would feed is C4GT. That's its project name. And the owners of the project are not available. They have some kind of privacy clause where they're not being named. They're represented by a legal outfit, and that's it. That's only people that you can talk to about this thing. So that is why the compressor station is needed there at Gidley. More exactly, that's at the 464 interchange there on South Military Highway. The address of this compressor station would be 2512. You can see a big, if you ride by there, you can see a big storage container for Virginia natural gas. On top of it is a big flaring tool that they use, and I ride by it twice a day, and I see it in use a lot. When they have too much pressure because they have too much gas in the pipe, they flare it off. So they're already flaring off gas because they've got enough coming in. And so this compressor station would go into the wooded area that is behind that tank. So it would need to be removed, and because it isn't an above ground structure. If it was more of the pipeline below ground, then it would not require rezoning. So that's something that we'll have to look to our city officials and discuss with them as well. So the purpose of this project is actually not to help us out a bit. It's so that Dominion, seeing that their natural gas is not going to probably come from the Atlantic Coast Pipeline into this area, they still want to get it in here, and they've devised this way to run it through the two Transco pipelines, one to the north, one to the south, and still be able to sell their gas. Dominion is also the nation's largest natural gas company. So they have natural gas they want to sell, and they will move it through the Transco pipeline, which already feeds their two plants in Mecklenburg and Greensville County. And so they'll just use them to transport it instead. That's the aim of this project. As a matter of fact, Dominion owns the land that Virginia Natural Gas would be building that compressor station on if approved. So that is the purpose of the project, and a lot of need. There is none. As far as need goes, there's actually some really, if you could get to that screen, Lauren, on that. Yeah, okay, one more. And next one. Next one. Next one. Okay, so we are now overpowered in Virginia, and this is from Standard & Poor market research from last year, December of last year, about the same time that they were proposing this project to the State Corporation Commission. The come as electricity demand in Virginia grew less than 1% from 2007, 2008 through 2017. So really, we're not having any growth for all of this demand. And we have this huge offshore wind project going on that will power hundreds of thousands of homes. It'll more than make up for any capacity that this is required of. And there's solar projects popping up all over the place. I went towards Suffolk the other day on 460, and there's a huge solar project going in right as you get off of 58 onto 460, and it stretches for as far as the eye can see. So all of this demand for energy is being accommodated by clean energy already. There's no need to build this project. Give you an idea, when Atlantic Coast Pipeline was proposed to being built, they claimed to have already sold all the capacity in it, and they sold it to the Dominion and Duke and the rest of them had sold it to them and made it look like they had sold it to actual real buyers. So this project is not needed whatsoever. And if we could go back a couple slides to the screen, I just want to point out some safety issues here. Okay, yeah, keep going. Okay, so this is Thurgood. Back one more time, please. I mean, forward one more. There you go. That's good, Lauren. Thank you. This is Thurgood Marshall Elementary School. We measured it off 31 feet to the frack gas pipeline. Now, like I said, this is a 24-inch interstate grade pipeline operating at 1250 PSI if the okay is given for this project to proceed, right next to this school. And as Steve alluded to earlier, bad things happen and welds come apart. And this is not what we need right through this incredibly packed area in our cities of Chesapeake, Norfolk, and indeed this would indeed reach into Portsmouth as well. So another thing is like I was saying, the pollution will drift according to the winds and could affect a lot more areas outside of that 1,000 feet, depending on how that goes. Lots of things can influence where the pollution ends up. Just look at the coal dust in downtown Norfolk, it's everywhere. So those are the questions that I hope to answer for everybody: safety and the purpose of this proposed project. One reason why they want to build it so fast, so quick, is because they are guaranteed a return by the State Corporation Commission on building gas infrastructure. They realize their time is nigh and they want to strike while they still can and get some of that money for building this, even if it's not used for very long or at all. They'll still make a profit on it. So that's going to wrap it up for me. I'm going to stick around for the questions. So if you have any questions, please give them to me at that time.
Jeff, let me make a couple remarks about what you just said.
Quickly, Steve, we're on a time limit.
Okay, I'll make it fast. Well, yeah, we're really, it's a fight against clean energy and this really, because the way they justify it as a peaker plants, in case it gets cold, then they might run it. There might be too much demand of electricity. That's how they're justifying it to SCC, and we know that we don't need it, but the SEC, they believe Dominion. We have to convince them that we got to do this clean energy. And just like you said, you just discovered a big project right over in Suffolk, and there's going to be, by the way, the plant, the wind farm off the coast is going to be 1.5 times the power output of this header project. But that's still, these are huge amounts of power. But that's really where we got to go. This is crazy what they're trying to do. But the SCC is buying into it so far. Okay, that's all.
Thanks so much, Steve.
One other thing. Russia and China are trying to break the back on the fracking industry in the United States by lowering prices, oil prices.
Thanks, Steve. I think now we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Ben and Jeff to tag team the questions in the chat real quick, which is great because I'm going to keep screen sharing. So if y'all want to hop over into that, guys, and spend about 10 minutes, if we even need that, to do the questions before we go over to Tyler. And I'm just going to stay on this action slide while y'all do that. Did y'all copy?
Yeah, sorry, I've been on mute there.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah, and part of that is because Buster's decided that he wants to speak tonight too. Okay, so from Ann to everybody, I've read that Southern Gas recently bought VNG's 5% in the ACP and purchased some for liquid natural gas products. Yes, they did. And we wonder if that doesn't connect here. One thing that also is, bringing a link to Dominion and Virginia Natural Gas is, besides the land that they're going to let them build the compressor station on, also they're using all of their easements for the Southside Connector as well, and beyond the Southside Connector. And let's see, I am not seeing any other questions there. Lauren, are you seeing any?
I'm not looking, Jeff. I'm staying on my screen share and watching the time. But if you don't see any, then we can go ahead and turn it over to Tyler. If there are more questions, we can always circle back, and people might have gotten a lot of their information from the last hour's program as well.
It looks like I'm seeing a couple of questions in there, so maybe I can read them, and Jeff, we can go over them. I'm seeing a question from Victoria. It says, how can you clarify the Transco Dominion relationship? How does this benefit Dominion?
Sure, yeah, I'll be glad to. Okay, so Transco and Dominion have been partners for a very long time. Transco uses their pipelines to actually transport Dominion's natural gas to our area and then also to the Northeast. So they have two big pipelines that go through Virginia, east to west, and actually a little south to north and north to south as well. So the way that works is they pay what's called a transmit fee, transport fee. Dominion puts their gas into Transco's pipeline. Transco charges them for sending that gas to their power stations and to their operations. And so what Transco did recently was they have made the valving on their pipes reversible, so they can get it from just about anywhere. They are not locked into one field or another. They're able to get it from just about any source that's being fracked, and make sure that they have the cheapest supply that they can get to the market, so they can make the most money. So it's a relationship where it's very much business, but it's very much profitable for both sides, I would think.
Thank you. And then a question I threw out in the chat, because I'm sure it's on a lot of people's minds. How will this compressor station be paid for?
Well, Virginia Natural Gas will have to pay for it. The infrastructure part, they're putting a few roadblocks on them in case that this project gets pulled. They won't be able to get paid. So that's one reason why they want to hurry up and get this thing built, especially now they're on the ropes with the coronavirus causing a decrease in demand and also causing the markets to go crazy. So as far as getting paid for, they can make a 6% profit on this, and in these days of tumbling markets, that's a pretty good investment. So the ratepayers will actually pay for this if this all comes about. It'll show up in your bill and my bill.
Thank you. That's all I'm seeing for the questions right now. I guess I'll take it over to the call to action section.
Sounds great. Thanks a lot, Tyler.
Great. My name is Tyler Eldred. I'm with a group called Tidewater DSA. I'm also a member of this Chesapeake Pipeline Resistance. This screen you've been looking at is a lot of information about how you can get involved. It's really important that we get as many people involved in this. As you can tell, there's these big corporations at work. We've got Virginia Natural Gas. We've got all these big developers who are trying to make a buck on this, and it's Chesapeake neighborhoods and the city of Chesapeake that is going to have to pay the cost in terms of the health effects, in terms of the danger, in terms of property values, literal cost to your utility bills. And that is why it is so important for us to raise our voice about this, so that we can let these elected representatives know that this is not something we want. Business as usual, the big companies are going to be able to do what they want, but not if we get as many people as we can to let them know that we're noticing this happening and we don't want it. So we've got 3 asks for you tonight, 3 main ones. The first one is it's very important that you leave a comment with the State Corporation Commission. The State Corporation Commission is a statewide body that has to approve this pipeline project. And we have a website, as you can see listed. They have a public comments where anyone in the state can leave a comment and say what they think about a particular project. So you got this website there. We want you to go to it, and you're gonna have to scroll down to the docket number. So that docket number, you can see it listed here. It is PUR 2019 00207. Again, that's PUR 2019 00207. And what you're going to want to do when you leave that comment is tell them all about how you don't want this Gidley compressor station in Chesapeake. What you say specifically is up to you. You can tell them, I don't want the risk to the health. I don't want our neighborhood's property values to go down. You could tell them, I don't want a risk of this pipeline blowing up and harming elementary students at Thurgood Marshall. There's many reasons to oppose this project, and the choice is yours. That's the first ask. The second ask is that you, it's important that we let Chesapeake City Council know about this. They have an opportunity to stop this. They have to allow the permits for this construction, and they have responsibility if this thing gets built. So we have an email address there. You can email the council at thecityofchesapeake.net. And we have a phone number here. That phone number is 757-382-6151. So we need you to call your representatives. Let them know how you feel about this project. Tell them to oppose this project. Ask for a meeting with them. Your city council members and your mayor should be making themselves available. So it's well within your rights to request a meeting with them to talk about this. And if you want to call your state representatives, we have some phone numbers there as well. So we have to call our representatives and let them know we don't want this thing. And then the third thing we're asking you to do is to join us. The only way that we are going to be able to oppose this thing is if we try to get people involved. And if you're someone who lives in Chesapeake or frankly lives in the Tidewater region, you've got a reason not for this to not be there. So if you haven't gotten involved already and you'd like to get involved, we would like to stay in touch with you. Please type your email address in the chat so we can reach out to you. And I would say also, please tell a friend about this. you know, not a lot of people know about this project. Folks like Virginia Natural Gas have a vested interest in lots of people not realizing this project is going on and just how harmful it is. You know, talk to a friend, talk to a family member about this project, and find a way to get involved. Thank you.
Thanks, Tyler. Did any questions come in during that last part while Tyler was talking, Jeff?
Let's see, I'm looking, and while I'm looking, I'm gonna.
Oh, the letter's got to go out by Tuesday.
Yeah, the is the 28th of April to get your comments into the State Corporation Commission, and you can actually do that online or by email. You can also mail them an old-fashioned letter. The U.S. Postal Service will love you for that. As Tyler's last statement there was about the vested interest that Virginia Natural Gas has in not letting people know about this project. During our canvassing events for the Southside Connector project, the people in the neighborhood had been told that those were water pipes going in. They had no idea that it was actually interstate grade transmission gas pipelines going through. They thought it was water. So yeah, it's important that we let as many people know about this as possible. And barring that, I do not see any further questions, Lauren. So I am going to turn it back to you. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Well, I was going to check and see if you had anything else. But I think that was everything that we had on our program. We were wanting to end with a call to action, and Tyler summed that up so great. Please feel free to message us. I'll leave this open for another few minutes in case anybody has some last lingering questions or wants to send an email. Wants to send us their email so they can stay in touch. Please also make sure that you are following us on Facebook and subscribing to some of those notifications, because we will be posting about upcoming town halls. Some of that great health impact information that Steve was talking about. We'll have another great speaker giving people more information on that. And that would also be a great town hall when we announce a date for you to invite friends or neighbors to kind of give them some down and dirty information on how this infrastructure will affect their health and affect their community's health. So this is not the last time that you or your neighbors will have the opportunity to learn about this. This is just our last opportunity to hopefully talk to you before the 28th comment deadline. I think the chat popped up, so let me just check that. Oh, perfect, Tyler, thank you. And please don't forget, if you were with us for the first hour of the statewide coalition town hall as well, the next big deadline will be the May 12th hearing, which we are crossing our fingers will be postponed for many of the reasons talked about tonight. But if it is not, you will be seeing emails and notifications from us about how to take action on that next deadline. Any other CPR 757 members need to say anything before we say bye to our supporters?
I just want to say thank you to everyone who signed on today. This is really important work. This is our city, this is our neighborhoods, so we have to do something.
The last I heard, they're going to try to have the public hearing on May 12th. They're going to try to have it on May 12th, but there won't be only like 10 people allowed in the room. And I don't know, it's crazy. They're trying to get this thing through. They're trying to use the virus period to get this done.
Yes, the heading is still scheduled for May 12th, which has always been the date for it. As of now, we have not heard that it will be postponed. We think that it likely will be held in some sort of electronic virtual way where people can Skype in or things like that, but obviously that's not accessible or just in terms of democratic participation. So again, we're hoping that it gets postponed until people can actually voice their opposition in person at the hearing. But if not, we will be letting people know how they can take action instead. Okay, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. I'll wait just a few minutes in case anybody needs to send us their email or send us any questions, but we appreciate you giving us your evening hours on Thursday, and happy almost weekend, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.